In the convoluted web of global business and geopolitical power plays, only a few figures have caused quite a stir, like Ukrainian billionaire businessman Dmytro Firtash, a man who was welcomed to the UK with open arms by politicians, royalty, Cambridge University, you name it. He's donated to a great deal of philanthropic initiatives, or maybe this was done to shift the light from the inconceivable accusations against him for various crimes such as siphoning $1 billion from Ukraine through a gas scheme, being an upper echelon associate of Russian organized crime due to his alleged links to Russian mafia boss Semion Mogilevich and President Vladimir Putin. On top of that, his alleged backing of former Ukrainian President Viktor Yanukovych's presidential campaign to assist in guising corrupt business deals as legitimately obtained contracts. The allegations against Mr Firtash don't end. Currently exiled in Austria fighting extradition to the United States after being accused of conspiring to fund, transfer, and conceal bribe payments, as well as racketeering abroad. Mr Firtash would be arrested and posted Austria's largest bail bond of $172 million. His attorneys proceeded to obtain a statement from a Ukrainian prosecutor general who allegedly was forced out by then Vice President Joe Biden because he refused to stop his investigation into a Ukrainian energy company that employed his son, Hunter Biden. Rudy Giuliani, former US President Donald Trump's personal attorney, who denies association with Firtash, promoted the Ukrainian Prosecutor General's statement and television appearances as purported evidence of wrongdoing by the Bidens. From humble beginnings in Ukraine to being a billionaire with so much controversy surrounding his name in so many countries, how did he get here? We'll do the reading and investigations. You'll do the watching. We welcome you to GAGING PRODUCTRY, where we provide you abridgment forms. Thank you for joining us today. This is the story of Dmytro Firtash. To get the bigger picture, I'll be providing you a summary of his background first. Dmytro Vasilyevich Firtash was born on the 2nd of May, 1965, in Bogdanovka, Zaleshchiki Raion, Ukraine, Soviet Union, to a driver father, Vasyl Firtash, and accountant mother, Maria Hryhorovna. Hopefully I pronounced that right. Dmytro began working at an early age. He assisted his parents grow tomatoes in a greenhouse on the land the family resided on, as a means of having an additional household income. Upon completing high school, he enrolled and graduated from the Krasnolimansky Railway Vocational School and the National Academy of Internal Affairs of Ukraine. Dmytro then served in the army from 1984 till 1986. He began his business practices immediately after this, establishing his first trading company in Chernivtsi, Ukraine, later transitioning over to Moscow in the early 1990s. Dmytro would initiate trade relations by exchanging organized food supplies for natural gas in the Central Asian region. He would then sell the gas as a profit in Europe. Realizing the pros in this, he would continue this for several years, until he obtained adequate discernment to form a company called Uraltransgaz, also known as ETG. ETG is a Hungary-registered energy company, established in 2002. The company was allegedly one of the middleman companies for Russian gas imports to Ukraine, which were intended to be sold to other European countries. ETG also entered into exclusive contracts for the supply of Turkmenistan gas to Ukraine. How did this all happen, you ask? Well, Russia has the world's largest natural gas reserves, and it's without a doubt its economy mainly thrives by its earnings from exporting its gas to Europe. The only problem was that most of the pipelines passed through Ukraine to reach Russia's other European customers. Corrupt politicians and businessmen in both Russia and Ukraine realized this, and would collaborate to establish intermediary companies that allegedly received gas from Russian state-owned Gazprom at the Russian border and sold it to other European countries. Uraltransgaz was quite a shady organization. Not only was it suspected to be acting as a front for Gazprom, but its owner Dmytro reportedly had no known assets. Yet, he had received close to $300 million in loans from Russian banks. Using the proceeds and loans from Eurotransgaz, he purchased Estonian Nitrofert and Tajikistani Tajik Azot enterprises. Both companies produce mineral fertilizers. The fertilizer acquisitions included Ukrainian Rivnazot, OJSC, which produces nitrogen fertilizers. In 2003, Dmytro founded Hungary-registered MFEZ with the purpose of developing the natural gas and energy sector in the country. Eurotransgaz would supply gas to the company, which proved helpful, as MFEZ would be granted a license to sell natural gas to Poland. I know this is a lot. We just need to understand where his money is derived from and the influence he possesses from his associates. Now, arriving in 2004, Eurotransgaz would be phased out and was succeeded by Russo-Ukrainian-War, a Swiss-registered venture and intermediary company that imports and sells natural gas from Russia, Turkmenistan, Uzbekistan, and Kazakhstan to Ukraine. The company profile states that Firtash founded it, though other sources state that former Ukraine President Leonid Kuchma and Vladimir Putin arranged the deal. I know this sounds crazy, especially with the war going on. I'll touch on that a bit later. Let me explain how RUE is structured. Half of the company is owned by Swiss-registered subsidiary erupted Holding AG, a subsidiary of Russian state-owned Gazprom, and the other half is owned by Swiss-registered private company Centrogaz Holding AG, acting on behalf of a consortium of GDF Group, owned by Dmytro Firtash and Ukrainian politician Ivan Fursan. So yes, Gazprom allegedly profited from selling gas to RUE, and again from the proceeds that RUE received from selling gas to Ukraine through its Aragaz Holding subsidiary. RUE would too allegedly sell to Firtash's Hungarian MFEZ company. RUE, being a middleman for all these countries, was heavily criticized because there was no need for it to be involved. It was speculated that it was used to conceal money flows, and the selected involved companies, like half-owner Gazprom, ensured Putin and Putin-aligned businessmen and politicians would receive a share. The same thing applied for Firtash and aligned Ukrainian businessmen and politicians. RUE would supply Ukraine with natural gas from 2004 until 2009, only for seismic allegations and contract disputes to arise, on which I'll touch on in a moment. We just need to pay closer attention to Mr Firtash's expansions. Around this period, he acquired Zungerson Harch, an Austrian-registered company that specializes in the construction of gas pipelines and infrastructure. By 2007, Firtash founded Group DF, also known as the Firtash Group of Companies, to consolidate his assets in the energy, real estate, agricultural, gas, banking, media, and chemical industry. This is the company that owns Centrogaz Holdings AG, part owner of RUE. Speaking of RUE, it reported profits of $755 million, paying out dividends of $735 million. It is alleged Firtash earned $3 billion just by reselling the gas Gazprom sold him. Now that you're aware of where Mr Firtash obtained his wealth, and the sort of power we can assume he possesses, we can now talk about the point from earlier. Firtash has been long accused of being a pro-Russian businessman, with connections to the Kremlin, restoring Russia's influence over Ukraine, as he allegedly funneled money into the campaigns of Ukrainian politicians with similar ideals. Those weren't the only allegations. Critics questioned why he was the middleman in the gas trade between the two countries, when it could have been other well-known oligarchs. Sources allege that he had connections to a man by the name of Semion Mogilevich, a Ukrainian-born Russian organized crime boss, who, according to Wikipedia, is believed to be directing a multi-billion-dollar international criminal empire, and is described by the Federal Bureau of Investigation as the most powerful and dangerous gangster in the world, with immense power and reach at a global scale, and connections to prominent government, military, and law enforcement officials, and powerful politicians around the world. In April 2022, Mogilevich had been featured on the FBI's top 10 most wanted list. Again, The ties between the two is merely speculation. In April 2005, the head of the security service of Ukraine, Alexander Turchinov, alleged that Semion was a silent partner in RUE after collecting a 20-volume file over a 12-year period. The file in question was destroyed. Valentin, Alexander's successor in security service, told the Kyiv Post in an interview that documents connecting Mogilevich with the nation's gas trade had been destroyed by one of his predecessors, Alexander Turchinov. Alexander would refute this claim, calling such claims as elaborate ruse to discredit his close ally, former Prime Minister Yulia Tymoshenko, who made a fortune in the gas trade in the 1990s. Who is Yulia Tymoshenko? I'll introduce her in a moment. I would like to emphasize on a point first. I don't know if you guys have realized, but it doesn't matter how skilled and equipped you are in large-scale government business. If you don't have money, or ties to politicians and/or organized crime groups, best believe your business won't see the light of day or receive a share. Russia is often characterized to be the most corrupt country in the world. Although somewhat true to some extent, corruption is a common practice in governments across the world. It's just a matter of it being brought to public attention or not. Russia just tends not to hide it. Semion Mogilevich is believed to be one of the crime bosses who has connections to various industries. Natural gas happens to be one of them. Some sources went as far as alleging he has shares in RUE. For businessmen like Firtash to rake up a fortune in that sort of industry, it's a common practice to ask for permission. And most videos are produced involving state business. You often have businessmen admit to paying millions and even billions in protection fees to mafias, and for politicians on the other end, it's commonly labeled as donations. Disclaimer, that's not to say all donations are for that purpose. According to documents that have been uncovered in 2010, during a disastrous United States diplomatic cables leak, Firtash had informed the US ambassador to Ukraine, William Taylor, of needing permission from Semion to do business in Ukraine during the lawless 1990s. Further claims state that Gazprom had allegedly asked Semion to oversee the natural gas deliveries from Russia to Ukraine via the gas intermediary RUE, though all parties deny any connections with one another. See? Remember Yulia Tymoshenko from earlier? She made this worse, charging that Firtash and his Nicosia, Cyprus-based Oligarch holding company, had been central to over $1 billion stolen from Ukraine to his gas scheme involving both Eurotransgas and RUE. The president in office, President Viktor Yanukovych, had it dismissed soon after this. An investigation into Oligarch holding company would be put to an end. Alright, let me explain Yulia's criticism, how she got here, and why she did this. Presidential elections took place back in 2004. A pro-Russian Ukrainian politician by the name of Viktor Yanukovych was candidate, and he was a member of the now-banned pro-Russian Party of Regions, which was the largest party in Ukraine between 2006 and 2014. The party was believed to be heavily backed by Putin, with the intention to get Yanukovych elected president via an alleged rigged election. This was later discovered, and the Orange Revolution occurred. A series of citizen protests marred by claims of voter intimidation, massive corruption, and electoral fraud. The election was held again, only for Viktor Yanukovych to lose to third president of Ukraine, Viktor Yushchenko, who aimed to orient Ukraine towards NATO and the European Union. Though in a way he did align himself with Russia too, because I'm certain you've realized that you do not want to get on Putin's bad side. Yes, this is the man that had Yulia dismissed as Prime Minister. Yushchenko aligning with NATO and the EU was not wise, especially with the country's dependence on Russia. Russian state-owned Gazprom later initiated a renegotiation of its gas supply contract. Ukraine didn't agree to the terms and conditions. Gazprom would thus terminate the contract altogether, and Ukraine was plunged into the unbearable winter climate that reached hypothermia temperatures. President Viktor profits would continue for Firtash from 2005 until 2007, until a disruption would be caused by co-Orange Revolution leader and multimillionaire former gas trader, Yulia Tymoshenko, who had been reinstated as Prime Minister in late 2007, after being in the acting role since January 2005. She has quite the interesting story. I'll be sure to create a film documenting her journey. Back to the story. Yulia's main agenda was to remove RUE and part owner, Firtash, from the natural gas trade altogether. This was due to the corruption speculations surrounding its formation and benefactors. The ongoing gas dispute between the two countries seemed to be coming to an end when the Russian government would release a statement informing that they were ready to end business with RUE at the end of 2008. This never happened, as by the fourth quarter of 2008, Tymoshenko and Putin signed a memorandum that provided for both import prices and transit tariffs to reach market and economically based levels within 3 years. The agreement would have Gazprom sell Central Asian gas directly to Ukrainian state-owned Naftogaz Ukraine. This contract would only be finalized once Ukraine had cleared its debts for the gas received from Russia, which Ukraine was unable to do. So RUE and Firtash continued business as usual until 2009. Why was Ukraine unable to clear its debts off in time? Firstly, Ukraine and Russia couldn't agree on how European netback prices should outgo. They calculated by taking the revenues from the oil, subtracting the royalties, subtracting production, and subtracting transportation costs, and you get your netback costs, which are associated with getting the oil to a market. Credit to Investopedia.com for the formula. The second reason Ukraine couldn't clear its debt is the government just didn't have the funds to clear it off in time, and taking into consideration economic factors like the 2007 and 8 financial crisis that plunged global oil prices. European gas prices are tied to oil prices only by a 6 to 9 month delay. Ukraine would be hit by a more severe recession than Russia. The IMF would assist Ukraine with a $16.5 billion loan as a result. This assisted Ukraine exponentially. Naftogaz would send a letter stating that if its gas supply was cut, then it would divert to its customer volumes bound for Europe. This was a daring move on Ukraine's end, as Gazprom had threatened to cut them off. Gazprom stood on its word and did so on the 1st of January 2009. After further disputes between the two countries, they realized they both had something to lose, and finally made amends on January 19, 2009. Gazprom head Alexei Miller and Naftogaz head Oleg Dabner signed two separate 10-year agreements, one in supplies to Ukraine and one for transit. This transit contract meant that RUE would no longer be the intermediary company. Despite being a financial loss, this didn't seem to bother Firtash, as he had been investing in foreign contracts by getting involved with a firm that was tasked with the redevelopment of the Drake Hotel in New York. Firtash had planned to invest $100 million. The deal unfortunately didn't surface. In 2008, he had established a Ukrainian Studies program at the University of Cambridge after a £4 million donation, which later led to the introduction of the Cambridge Ukraine studentships that granted eligible students from Ukraine to seek a master's degree at the institution. Prince Philip would even welcome Firtash into the Guild of Benefactors Club at the university. Firtash, realizing he had to cut his losses from the RUE contract, he would pursue asset consolidation in other industries by commencing the merger of a diverse range of Ukrainian nitrogen enterprises in 2010. By 2011, he had become the owner of 4 nitrogen fertilizers, granting Firtash the power to establish himself in the Ukrainian market, replacing foreign suppliers. The 4 fertilizer assets would strengthen its chemical asset parent company, Ostchem Holding, a subsidiary of Firtash's diversified international group company, Group DF. Besides the ties he possesses, and his pockets running deep, the speculated reason Firtash was free to expand at this alarming rate is the Ukraine presidential elections took place in January 2010, and the man who won was none other than corrupt pro-Russian Ukrainian politician Viktor Yanukovych. Yes, the man who was backed by Putin and allegedly by Firtash back in 2004. At one of his early press conferences, he would state Ukraine must be a neutral state, which should be part of a collective defense system with the European Union, NATO, and Russia will take part in. Further stating Ukraine shouldn't join neither NATO nor the CSTO. What else did Yanukovych do? So, you see Yulia Tymoshenko? She was actually the other candidate in the 2010 presidential elections, finishing second to Yanukovych. Yanukovych would proceed to launch a politically motivated prosecution against Yulia, having her arrested and being found guilty in October 2011 for abuse of power as Prime Minister by ordering Naftogaz to sign gas deals with Gazprom in 2009. The prosecutor's office would have her rearrested and convicted for tax evasion and embezzlement of government funds by the United Energy Systems of Ukraine between 1996 and 2000. This was the period she became a multimillionaire gas trader. Yanukovych had imposed strict terms on Ukrainian press freedom, increased corruption, and placed friends as well as associates to positions of authority without proper regard to their qualifications. For Firtash, well, he's recently acquired fertilizer assets would amount to 1 billion hryvnia, further doubling down on his titanium enterprise investments he had acquired in 2007, concurrently being occupied with mining and processing plants. He would lastly end the year off by being a strategic investor in Naftogaz Bank, the 11th largest bank in Ukraine, acquiring an 89% stake and providing the bank with $440 million in capital. 2 years on, economic pressure was mounting on Ukraine. Russia wanted Ukraine to withdraw from signing an association agreement with the European Union and instead accept the Russian trade deal and loan bailout. President Yanukovych would sign the deal, and this would be one of the causes of the uproar amongst Ukrainian citizens, later sparking the Revolution of Dignity, also known as the Maidan Revolution or the Ukraine Revolution, a deadly conflict between state forces and protesters in Kyiv, Ukraine, which resulted in more than 80 casualties and Yanukovych fleeing the country and exiling in Russia. This was the origin of the 2014 Russia-Ukraine War, where Russia annexed Crimea from Ukraine. Yanukovych would be removed from office, and Parliament would authorize the release of Yulia Tymoshenko from prison, and the Supreme Court of Human Rights would rehabilitate her rights not too long after. Firtash's name was too stood up in controversy during this period, mainly dating back to 2013. He made a substantial business acquisition. His GDF Media Limited business, another company that forms a part of his vast Group DF subsidiaries, acquired Intermediary Group Limited, a Ukrainian media company that controlled 9 TV channels. This acquisition was met with a ton of criticism, as the media outlets were accused of spreading pro-Russian political agendas in the view of the Russian-Ukraine war. That wasn't the only strange thing that occurred. The British Ministry of Defence sold the decommissioned Brompton Road tube station to Firtash in February 2014 for £53 million, stating that it would be converted to residential flats. The British government was trying to understand what was transpiring in Ukraine. Firtash was invited to the Foreign Office, where he allegedly tried to persuade the government into not imposing sanctions against Russia, stating that it will only make things worse. Firtash had fled to Vienna, Austria around the time of the Ukraine Revolution protests. Not too long after making the move, he would be arrested by Austrian authorities in March. Not for any crime he committed in Austria, no. This was due to a federal indictment by the United States. A Chicago grand jury later indicted Firtash and 5 others in April for an $18.5 million bribe offered to government officials in India in relation to titanium mining licenses for minerals that were later to be sold to American aircraft manufacturing company, Boeing. The indictment included additional charges of money laundering and racketeering. Firtash had posted Austria's largest bail bond of $172 million after being held in custody for a week, issuing a statement that read, "Thankfully I have the utmost confidence in the Austrian judicial system and will use all legal means to prove my innocence," further stating US authorities were making allegations that were completely absurd and unfounded. During the forthcoming elections that were supposed to be held in March 2015, but were moved to May 2014 due to the war and ousting of Yanukovych, Firtash announced that he hoped for the forthcoming presidential elections to overcome the chaos in Ukraine and strengthen the country on the international political scene, adding that he would not allow for his reputation to be ruined by those who are driven by political motivations and are not interested in Ukraine and its people, urging big businesses to act according to the logic of economic patriotism and buy up goods in domestic companies. During an interview given to the BBC in May 2014, he maintained his innocence, disputing the fact that he paid any bribes, as well as the rumors that he was anyway linked to organized crime, believing that he is a pawn in the geopolitical struggle between the United States and Russia. Reuters news agency would issue a special report that documented Gazprom's sale of more than 20 billion cubic meters of gas at below market price, thus allowing Firtash to accumulate up to $3 billion during RUE's stint as intermediary company. The report also talks about the release of documents that prove Putin extended credit lines to Firtash of up to $11 billion, which assisted Firtash in the backing of former Ukraine President Viktor Yanukovych's campaign. In April 2015, the Vienna Regional Criminal Court rejected the US request of his extradition, stating the US authorities had not provided sufficient evidence that Firtash paid bribes in India, and in particular had not provided witness statement in support of its assertions, and that it was politically motivated. He stepped down as president of the Federation of Employees of Ukraine after 5 years in the position in 2016. During the indictment proceedings brought against him, American political operative and lawyer Lonnie Davis represented Firtash until 2019. Firtash would switch him out for Joseph Dijanova and Victoria Tunsing. They were hired on the recommendation of Donald Trump's lawyer, Rudy Giuliani's associate Lev Parnas. Why was this done? Well, it's alleged that Giuliani instructed Parnas to approach Firtash with the recommendation, with the proposition that Firtash could assist in issuing compromising information on President Joe Biden. According to Wikipedia, Bloomberg News reported, during the summer of 2019, Firtash associates began attempting to dig up dirt on the Bidens in an effort to solicit Giuliani's assistance with Firtash's legal matters, as well as hiring Dijanova and Tunsing in July. Further reporting, its sources told them Giuliani's high-profile publicity of the shocking statement had greatly reduced the chances of the US Justice Department dropping the charges against Firtash, as it would appear to be political quid pro quo. Viktor Shokin, the Ukraine former prosecutor general's statement read, Joe Biden actually had him fired because he refused to stop his investigation into Burisma, a Ukrainian energy firm that employed Biden's son, Hunter Biden. Viktor isn't an angel either. He's often criticized for blocking corruption investigations, and there has been no evidence produced of wrongdoing by Hunter Biden in Ukraine. The point of getting dirt on Joe Biden was to assist President Donald Trump in his re-election. It is alleged that Rudy Giuliani, Lev Parnas, and Igor Fruman identified then US Ambassador Marie Yovanovitch as being an obstacle. ABC News released a voice recording of a dinner allegedly held by Donald Trump in April 2018, with Lev Parnas as a guest. The recording exposed Parnas informing Trump that they needed to get rid of Yovanovitch. The New York Times wrote, their mission was to find people and information that could be used to undermine the special counsel's investigation, and also to damage former Vice President Joe Biden. Through 2018, Parnas and Fruman allegedly helped Giuliani, as well as his associates, to contact Ukrainians who were employed to find alleged corrupt material involving Joe Biden's son Hunter Biden and Burisma. The two alleged Ukrainian contacts were former Ukraine prosecutor generals Yuri Lutsenko and Viktor Yanukovych. Lev Parnas and Igor Fruman were later indicted. With the Russia-Ukraine war getting worse in 2022, Ukrainian authorities increased pressure on Firtash by expanding a corruption investigation into his energy businesses. Managers at some of the companies were too charged with embezzlement. £157 million of Firtash's assets were seized. This was allegedly due to a Ukraine gas transportation scheme between 2016 and 2022. At this point, the National Security and Defense Council of Ukraine had imposed sanctions against Firtash, alleging that his titanium businesses aided the military-industrial complex of the Russian Federation. Firtash's formerly owned titanium-magnesium plant was returned to Ukraine state ownership, and a vast portion of his Ukraine regional natural gas distribution companies were transferred to the hands of Naftogaz. As of the second quarter of 2024, Mr Firtash is still in Austria, maintaining a low profile. It's officially been 10 years since his indictment was brought up, and he's still attempting to have his charges dropped. As we conclude this story, we've witnessed an individual's rise from a head of a declining food trading company to a large-scale empire covering various lucrative industries. Mr Firtash's journey is a testament to the unpredictable twists of fate and ever-enduring allure of power. Thank you for watching.